everyone, Amy and Josh here from CaliforniaThroughMyLens.com, and I hope everyone is staying safe during this quarantine.
We just wanted to make this video to share some of our top California travel tips that you can use when planning your adventures in the state. Let's jump into it. For our first tip, California is absolutely huge. It can easily take 12 to 13 hours to drive north to south across the state, and that's without stopping. Just the LA area is massive, and you can spend a week exploring it by itself. I would recommend that you don't try to do too much on your trip unless you're good with long drives and rushed adventures. Maybe consider a week in the northern part of the state with San Francisco, Napa, Yosemite, things like that, and then another week in the southern portion with LA, San Diego, Joshua Tree, and that area. Also, people often think that they can drive Pacific Coast Highway in one day from LA to San Francisco, and while that's technically possible, you wouldn't be able to really stop and see anything. I would recommend that you take at least 2 to 3 days for that drive, as it's beautiful and you don't want to rush through it. Let me know if you want any more information on suggested itineraries in California or anything like that I can cover in another video.
For our next recommendation, it's probably best to rent a car while in California. Because California is so big, it's hard to see much without renting a car, especially in the LA area since public transportation is not that great. I will say that in San Francisco, you can get by without a car if you just want to stay in the city. The BART is easy to use from the airport, and public transportation with cable cars and buses work pretty good in the city. If you don't plan to rent a car, be sure to download the Uber and Lyft apps, as many people use those to get around the big cities.
Our next tip is to prepare for many different climates while in California. If you stay in the LA San Diego area, then the climate is relatively the same, especially during the summer. If you go up to the Eastern Sierras, Yosemite, Tahoe, any of those places, it can be cold and rainy even in the summer, so you want to prepare for that. The same is true for San Francisco. You want to prepare for the heat and cold while in the city. The climate can be cold in the morning and warm in the afternoon, so definitely bring a jacket and be ready for any type of weather when you visit.
Our next recommendation is plan more time for a trip than you would think. Traffic is pretty bad in Los Angeles, and it could take a good hour to get to a destination that's only 5 to 10 miles away, depending on what time of day you go. The same can be said for rush hour in San Francisco as well, if you're trying to get out of the city or back into it. Also, Pacific Coast Highway is very windy with many 2-lane roads, so that drive often takes a lot longer than people think it would.
Tip number 5 is to buy a national parks pass if you plan to go to a couple different national parks. Yosemite itself costs $35 to enter, and many of the other parks are at least $30. If you plan to go to more than 2, then it's cheaper to buy the year pass for $80 than to pay for each of them individually. California has 9 national parks and many national monuments, plus other places that accept the pass for discounted entry. You can get more information on the pass in the description.
Our next tip is that California can be expensive and to know that going in. There is a state tax on both food and items that you purchase, and tipping is customary if you come from a place where there is no tipping. Also, parking can be expensive in tourist areas in San Francisco at $30 to $40 a day, and gas is often pretty expensive around the state as well. If you're looking to visit multiple places in a city, you may be able to get a discount online. Check out Go City Passes or some of the other discount tour attraction sites.
For our next tip, we just wanted to talk a little bit about food. Honestly, California has everything you could want in terms of food. In big cities, you can get most cuisines and dietary restrictions without trying too hard. In the smaller cities, this is not always the case, but there's usually at least a couple options at most places. Amy's a vegetarian, and it's never that hard for her to find something to eat when we travel in California. Here are a few things you have to try while in the state. First, In-N-Out Burger, which is a quintessential California restaurant. Second, the California Burrito, which is a combination of carne asada, salsa, cheese, and french fries in a burrito. You can find them in a lot of Mexican restaurants near San Diego. Third, clam chowder in a bread bowl. I recommend Bodine in San Francisco or Splash Cafe in San Luis Obispo if you're driving Pacific Coast Highway. Fourth, grab some fish tacos along the coast. They can be found all over, and they're usually pretty great wherever you get them. Lastly, find a new donut shop. I love donuts, so I had to recommend them in California, especially in the big cities that often have lots of fun, unique donut shops. I have a video on my favorites in the description.
Next up, book your campsites and hotels in advance, especially in popular national parks or big cities. Places like Yosemite have set dates, often 6 months in advance, when they release their campground reservations. If you're planning a trip, note these dates so you can be online and ready to try and get a spot. While big cities like LA and San Francisco often have rooms available close to when you visit, I always recommend booking online in advance so that you have peace of mind when you're going on your trip.
Our second to last tip is to visit popular attractions during the weekdays if at all possible. Places like Disneyland will be packed during the weekends and often on the weekdays during the summer as well. However, if you can travel during the week, this is your best chance to visit the popular spots without a lot of crowds. Also, for places like Disneyland, there are crowd calendars online that can help you pick the best time to go and are helpful in planning your trip. Just remember, the weekday is always your best time to travel while in California.
Our last tip is just reiterating that you don't want to try and do too much on your trip to California. The main question we get asked via email is how to fit it all in, and to that we would recommend that you don't try to fit it all in one trip. Take a trip to Northern California and go to San Francisco, Napa, and Yosemite over a week. Come back and take another trip to Los Angeles, Hollywood, San Diego, and Joshua Tree. You could even take a trip where you drive Pacific Coast Highway over 3 to 4 days and then head over to Las Vegas. There are a lot of great 1 to 2 week options, so don't try to cram it all into one trip.
That's it for our California travel tips. Let us know what we left off or if you have any suggestions in the comments, and we'll see you on the next video.